Welcome to the Seed Creative Podcast, the podcast where we discuss both video production and just life in general. The goal of this podcast is the same as the goal of our business, to make a difference in people's lives. There he goes.
Wow, he stopped before the chord. That was nice.
Yeah.
Way to go, you little guy.
This thing lives on my desk most of the time.
Welcome to the Seed Creative Podcast.
Welcome.
I like that. That was very nice. That was ASMR almost. So today we're talking about something semi-controversial. We're talking about, is film school worth it? And I want to preface this ahead of time by saying Coker and I got different degrees, but we both went to the same college, or different types of degrees, I should say.
Slightly different.
Yeah. But we both went to the University of Alabama. That is the only name dropping we're going to do for the most part, because we want to keep it very nice, and also this is our opinion and only based off of our experience.
Yes.
And I can tell you that, you know, it totally depends on your circumstance. Like, that is like the whole story that we're going to tell, I think. And so Coker, how about you start us off and tell us, is it worth it?
Is it worth it? No. No, I'm just
That's
kidding.
That's it.
The end.
Goodbye.
Oh, no. Well, I think to answer that question, we need to talk about kind of what we each majored in. I majored in, I usually just say film, but technically my degree is telecommunication and film, which no longer exists at the University of Alabama. It's I think I was the last one, because I remember my freshman year, they were like, we're phasing this degree out. You can keep it if you want, but we're transitioning everybody else over to something else. And so I think I was the only one who stuck with it. Ended up being the last one.
Was Reagan TCF?
I think Reagan was TCF.
Okay, so telecommunication and film, TCF. We're going to call it TCF from now on.
Yes.
Moving on.
I was TCF, and then I double majored in theater as well.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about, so how did you get started, like going into college? You know, was that the plan, or was...
Great question.
Yeah.
So I guess, I've always loved film and making videos and that kind of stuff. But in high school, my thing was theater. That's what I was doing. I was always interested. I was always making little videos, and I was always watching movies and loving to critique, loved cinema. But when it came to college, I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll do theater. That's what I've been doing. That's what I need to do. But one of the things that helped me kind of land at the University of Alabama was that I said, I was thinking about doing theater and everything, but just out of the blue, I was just like, I want to double major in film too. And so University of Alabama was one of the places that had good programs for both of those. And it's not the only reason I went to Alabama, but it was a big...
Because you went for football, right?
Yes.
That's what everybody always assumes.
I went for football, that's right. Yeah. But I can't even imagine that being like, where I'll go to school. Well, they got a good football team, so I'll go there. It
was just happenstance that I liked Alabama. I actually actively tried to not come to Alabama.
Really?
Yeah, because I didn't want people to think that. And I also tried to get in, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but I tried to get into like a more established, like just film school.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I tried to not come to Alabama. And I guess I'll just talk about it now. My criteria for picking a school was I wanted a college with a good film school and a good band, because I'm a good marching band. Because that was like, this is what's important to me. Everything else doesn't really matter to me. So that kind of narrowed it down quite a bit to several schools. And I'm very glad where I ended up. I was a fan of Alabama my whole life. I have family that came here, even though we're not from here. But I was trying to avoid it because everybody thinks Alabama is just a football school. Yeah. And I have other grandparents that are paying for it, and they didn't think at the time that it was good. But they like it now. And so I tried to go to the University of Southern California. And I almost got into film school, but I would not have gotten in because of my grades, because they do like a dual admission process. And because they have a great band, and that would have been a good experience. And I tried a couple other schools, but that was like the main one that I tried. And I just ended up here out of luck and, what internships and stuff that I was offered that I will save for later. But that was one of my criteria.
Now your major was the follow-up program with which they replaced TCF.
Yes. So it's called creative media, which is kind of, I think we both agree, is like kind of what everybody's switching to.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe not like I said, like USC is Southern California. USC is still probably a film school, but all these other schools are kind of changing to these more broad media.
Because it's journalism and creative media.
Yes.
So it encompasses all of them.
Yeah. But there's also a journalism major and a creative media. Like there's other.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah. And there's sports media, which is under JCM. And I think PR is even under JCM technically.
That sounds right.
I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. But
I just remember like PR majors. That's like all I would see. At Reese Pfeiffer, it was like, you stop anyone, hey, what's your major? Oh, I'm PR.
It's because we're like the number one PR school. We're like in the top.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, they've won more national championships than the football team. They've won like 20 something.
Dang.
Yeah, they're a big deal. So,
that's awesome.
So UA is a great PR school. So,
cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so continue. So you came to school as a double major. Yeah,
and when I first started, the film degree was actually on the one that was more on the back burner.
Right.
I was focusing on theater. I actually started as musical theater and film. I was a double major, and so I started off, like I said, TCF was on the back burner, but as I went on, I was like, I do love acting. I still do. I love acting in the videos we do here at Seed and in my own stuff. But as time went on, I was like, I want to focus more on production, that kind of stuff, not be an actor. So I kind of, I don't want to say downgraded, but I stepped down to just a theater degree. But I started out. And my first semester, I was only taking one film class, and it was one of the weirdest ones. It was JCM 100, and it was called Intro to Story, which is a very broad term.
Right.
And it was a very broad class. I was going in, and I was like ready to go. I was like, oh man, this is like, can't wait. It's going to be film history and all this good stuff. And it totally wasn't. It was, I think, it remained the largest class I ever took at UA, it was like 300 people. And it was in anyone studying anything remotely. I guess anything that falls under JCM.
Yeah.
And so it was just a ton of people, and it covered everything. I think we watched a good bit of movies in that class, but only one of them did we talk about like, this is cinema and this is how movies are made. But we watched that. We watched TV shows. We watched news stuff. We watched web content. We watched all kinds of, it was anything and everything, the big class. And it was just like so weird and broad that it almost turned me off completely to being a film major. I was just like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
But I hung around, and then my next semester, my freshman year, got a really cool class. This was TCF 112, because everyone cares about the class code designation. JCM 112 now. But this was film history and criticism, and I loved it. This is the only name drop I'm going to do, because I know he won't mind. He's a retired professor now, but this was taught by Professor Jeremy Butler. Fantastic guy. Best guy. Yeah, loved hearing that class. And it was funny because that class there were a lot of non-majors who took that class. And so, because it's
a fine arts credit.
It's a fine arts credit, and you're just sitting there watching movies, so it's really easy. But, they were all just kind of in there. But I was that one, like, nerd on the front row. Like, oh, yeah, here we go. We're going to watch a silent movie today. Let's do it.
His tests were hard, by the way. I will say that.
They were, yes.
His tests were the hardest tests I had in college. Especially, I took another class with him, too. I took 2 classes with him. And
same.
one was, the other one was the international studies class. Sorry, I just made
cool.
But,
no, you're good.
And it was French films. I did a lot of international things, but it was French films. And man, does he know his stuff, first of all.
Oh, yeah.
And second of all, holy crap, his tests were hard.
Yeah.
But it's okay, because I feel like I learned a ton from studying for them. So anyway, great guy.
The other class I took from him was, it was called American Cinema.
Oh.
And it was definitely more the like it was like the history class, and then it was not hands-on. It was very theory, that kind of cinema study sort of thing. And I loved that class too. We talked about that. And it was mostly papers. We didn't really have any tests in that class, but it was I think my last semester of college I took it. So we kind of bookended my college career. But that was a good class. We talked about authorship, auteurship, depending on who you ask. We talked about genre. We talked about movie stars, that kind of stuff. And I ended up writing a paper on Billy Wilder, who is my favorite director. And
I didn't know that.
that's and I loved him beforehand, but that's really how I got to love The Apartment,
which
is my favorite movie, as I wrote a paper
I knew
on
that
it.
was your favorite movie, but I know that was also your favorite director. So makes sense.
So. Yeah, love it. But yeah, so we had that class, that film history class, then also took a class called Mass Comm 101, Mass Communication 101, which was kind of like the JCM 100 Intro to Story class, in that it was very broad, kind of for everybody, but it was a lot more applied. It was like, okay, this is how each of these fields operate. This is how the sausage gets made.
Right.
You know, that it was still not hands-on, but it was much more applied. And then once you get into the more 200, 300 little classes, that's when you get more hands-on. So Intro to Video Production, that's the class where we learned how to operate a, kind of a low-level camera, learn how to use all the software, learn Premiere, and then go a step farther in a class called Videography, which is you just shoot some stuff. We shot a little music video, we shot a little documentary, and we recreated a scene from a movie. I recreated the scene from, and it was a very easy scene to recreate, but it's from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I don't know if you've seen that movie, where he goes back, he goes to rent a car and the car is not there, so he walks back to the airport and just cusses the woman out for that. It was that scene. The reason I wanted to do that scene is I was like, well, I want to go out of my comfort zone. How can I do that? Well, I don't really do anything with a lot of cussing, so that might work.
That's funny.
And I love Steve Martin. I love that movie, so whatever. That's what I did.
That's an incredible choice. Most people do something super like, oh, I'm going to do a Law and Order episode. Or like, oh, I'm going to, oh, let's do the Mission Impossible sequence where he jumps out of the plane. Like they're trying to do crazy stuff.
Yeah, crazy stuff. One guy did the, what is it, Contact, where she opens the mirror. You know that shot?
Oh, yes.
He did that, and he nailed it. It was very impressive.
I've seen that video recreation. That might go down as the greatest shot in the history of film. I don't know. That shot was just
pretty sweet.
I remember watching it as a kid, and it was just it's so clear that I was supposed to be a camera person. Looking back, because I was just mesmerized, and I would loop it back as a kid.
Cool.
On DVD, I'd be pressing the rewind. The thing would go and buzz while trying to go back. Anyway, so you did videography.
Started to get those hands-on class. I took a multicam video production class, which was kind of cool. But then once you get to the 400 level classes, that's where you get really kind of zeroed in on something. And so for me, that was the film production and creative end of that. So screenwriting, wrote 4 or 5 scripts in that class, and one of them ended up being the film that I directed, and that was another class I took, directing. Every one of us in that class directed a little film of our own, and mine was Drawn to Campus, which we've talked about before on this podcast. But a lot of great hands-on experience through that, and after I finished that class, I directed my second film, Night of the Living Date, which I got class credit for as well. It was counted as an independent study or something. But yeah, so to sum all of that up, what I ended up getting to do was, get a good survey of everything that goes on in this world, zero in wherever I would like, and then in the end, get to make something, use my skills to do what I wanted to do.
So kind of going into my experience. So like we said, I was in the, not the predecessor, that's your...
The successor.
The successor. I can't think of it. The successor to TCF, and it's JCM, so Creative Media. And I was in similar classes. Honestly, wasn't as different as they probably are trying to make it.
Yeah.
I think there's more major options like sports media, that kind of stuff. But the start of college was really tough for me, and I was never going to think about dropping out. Like that was never going to happen for me. But I would say that like I felt like it wasn't worth it initially. And that's because I got very lucky in getting an internship at the DMC, the Digital Media Center on campus, and working for this thing called the Center for Public Television. I still work there. By the time this comes out, I will have graduated and be done working there. But I learned everything that I could possibly learn in terms of technical skills in the first month working there that I was going to learn in the first, what I was going to be able to learn in the first 2 years of being at school. Now I learned a ton of like the film scholar side of it. I saw a ton of movies I'd never seen, never would have seen, learned a ton about that. And that in turn enhanced my filmmaking because I learned things, but it was really tough because obviously when you come to college, I mean, both of us enjoy silent movies, stuff like that. So we were looking forward to watching that. But what's most exciting is seeing you're making stuff.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
And so it was really hard to have to wait because the way classes are structured, you have to take the intro before you can get the prerequisite to take the next thing. It's like if you're an engineer, you got to take the intro level math. Even though you could probably get an A on every single test, easy, but you can't immediately jump into the high level stuff because you go to university. That's what they're going to make you do. It's just part of the system. Yeah. Kind of sucks. But that's okay because at the same time, I was really good. And I had a conversation with my dad early on about this. And I was like, Dad, like, this sucks. Like, I started editing in Premiere when I was a sophomore in high school. Like, and I already knew what they were starting to say, like the easy stuff, like the intro stuff. And I was just like they're like, here's how to create a timeline or a sequence. You know, it's like, whoa. It's like, please shoot me now. Yeah. So, but I was like, but there's tons of people in the class that had no idea. That was great for them. Yeah. So, anyway, he was like, just listen. He had the same situation because he was a musician growing up and he was getting a music degree. And he knew he was able to test out of these classes eventually, but he was already a super proficient piano player, and he was in a class going, here's how to play middle C and playing one note at a time. And it was like so annoying to him. But what he told me was listen to everything the teacher says. And even if it's in 1 year, out the other year, because you already know what they're saying. They might say it a different way, or they will probably say what is more likely is they will say, hey, even though I am very experienced, yesterday I formatted an SD card by accident and lost all my footage. Don't do that. And next thing you know, that sticks in your brain. And if I hadn't listened to that, and I can't think of specifics right now, but there are definitely little things that I learned along the way that I would not have. I learned how to wrap an XLR cord. Like, that's helpful. Like, there's little things like that all along the way that has made me better. And also the lack of an ego was also something that I had to try to get through. I'm talking like my first semester of college, because I had gotten this internship and I was learning more. I was learning ahead of other people, but I had to humble myself and remember that everybody that I'm being taught by knows way more than me. And I still to this day knows way more than I do. So anyway, with that said, do you want to chime in before any thoughts before I continue?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I didn't know if I was keeping you. So with that said, as I finally got into some more of the upper level classes, that's when I started learning a lot. I am not a good writer, and I took a lot of writing classes on purpose. So I started taking classes on purpose that I was bad at. Like, I knew that I would learn how to shoot better as I went along in my internship, but they were not teaching me how to write, because we were doing client work, and it was more like doc style. Not that there's not writing, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not like writing a narrative film. So I would take these classes that I knew were going to be hard, but it helped me. It really did. And, so also another little tangent that I have thought about as well is there's different ways that film school is split in between. There's 3 different categories. And at the end of the day, film school is what you make of it. So yes. Yeah. So definitely. So it's all about you using the tools. So I think there's 3 different types, and most of them fit into the same category that we're in, which is they have the tools, but they're not babying you. They're not you know, you're not making so many projects in class together. Like, oh, we're in this class in this semester, we're directing Detective Oliver. I'm going to use that because I can't. I have no friends that did that, so it's okay. Like, you know, we're directing this film. You know, there's plenty of schools that is what you do. That is how USC operates. Or there are schools, so there's that. Then there's schools on the other end of the spectrum that have like super, super, super nice stuff, but like no teaching. Like, and we're in the,
you just do the stuff.
Yeah, we're just in the nice like middle zone to where, we don't have like we don't have the George Lucas CGI thing that USC has. I don't know if you know about that. They have this crazy like CGI thing that's paid for by George Lucas there. We don't have that. But what we do have is a nice gear room that is pretty great for a school that is not primarily film.
Yeah.
And just use it. And my last analogy, and I'll shut up and let you talk for a second, is film school is like a library, okay? And you're paying tuition to get the key to the library or your ACT card where you swipe in. People. But anyway, you walk in, and anybody can walk in and out of the library. If they got the money, and that's of course a factor, you can walk in and out. That's it. But you go in there, and on this wall there's the gear, and on this wall are all the other students who are different than you. Some of them are the same as you. They all want to work on stuff, and they're all from different walks of life and can write different stories. And over here is the faculty, and they can teach you something. Even if you might even meet some teachers that you think, like I said, I had the arrogance at the beginning of thinking that some of them couldn't teach me anything, but all of them have something at a varying degree. And if you walk around this library and you grab a little bit from every section of it, you're going to walk out with it being totally worth it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah. It's just, it's what you make it. And I remember that being something I was told when I was first starting that program, that it's what you make it. And it's spot on. And the number one reason I would recommend somebody going to film school, and any reason, the number one reason I would be hesitant to say, no, it's not worth it, just right off the bat, is because of that right there, is all those resources, the gear, the people, the mentorships. It's all included with the price of tuition. And so just being able to use that and just have that at your disposal is priceless. It is fantastic. Now, here is where I'll throw in something I haven't brought up yet. So all my video skills, things I learned from film school, that's how to shoot, how to direct, how to write, how to edit, that kind of stuff. That's what I learned in college.
Right. Graphic
design, art, and most notably motion design, I am all self-taught on. So let that hang for a minute.
And you got hired for more than just your motion design, but initially the thing that you started with was motion design.
That played a huge part in it. And pretty much all the work I did when I was freelancing was motion design work. And so, like I said, I'm self-taught on those. And when I say that, I mean I took online courses. So I learned how to do those things via an online service called Udemy. And that is an online learning program where the classes are a la carte. You know, I want to learn Illustrator. I want to learn After Effects. And that's what you do. You buy those courses. They have sales all the time, so they're usually very affordable. And some of them are with great instructors. The guy who taught me Illustrator, if we're still doing the recommendation thing, I'm going to recommend this guy. It's called Bring Your Own Laptop. He has his own sort of education program inside and outside of Udemy. It's called Bring Your Own Laptop. His name is Daniel Walter Scott. He'll pretty much he can teach you how to use any of the Adobe software. He knows all of them, and he even knows he teaches a lot of stuff that's outside of that too. Like my dad does, user interface and user experience. He has classes on how to use like that dedicated software. Cool. It's insane, all the things he offers. So check him out, give him some love. That's Daniel Walter Scott at BringYourOwnLaptop.com.
He's got a good name, Daniel Walter.
Isn't that
Scott?
a great name? Yeah. And he's a fascinating guy too because he was born in New Zealand. He's a Kiwi, but now he lives in Ireland.
Wow,
it's super cool.
Let's make a doc about him.
Let's make a documentary about him. Dan, if you're listening, We're talking about you. So he's got his own podcast too. Yeah, we should do crossover.
Oh, that's great.
That would be really cool.
Let's contact him. I'm serious.
Yeah, we should definitely do that.
Yeah,
that would be sweet. So now I'm excited for that. Anyway,
you can host it.
So I'd love to. So yeah, I learned Illustrator there, and I learned After Effects on Udemy as well, and
George hasn't talked.
Georgia farted.
And George coughed.
I coughed. I'm sorry, guys. Continue.
All right, anyway.
All good.
It was one of those things where it's like I've got to hold it in, or I'm gonna have to get up.
No,
My bad.
You're all good. So I learned Illustrator from him, and then I learned After Effects on Udemy as well. And I learned these skills, and for the longest time, now that I've been at it for doing all these things for so long, and since I've kind of phased out graphic design from my skill set, this may have changed. But for a long time, it was the software I knew best. It was Illustrator, then After Effects, then Premiere, in that order. And Premiere was the one I learned in college.
Yeah.
So I think the question might get a different answer when you start to talk about the different skills that you want.
Right.
So with graphic design, if anyone asks me, is it worth going to school for graphic design or motion design, I might be a little more hesitant to say, oh yeah, absolutely, because it's like, what sort of resources are you going to be getting that you're not just going to be getting from an online course? Here's the other thing I'll share with you. Those classes I did take from the university on editing, especially the Intro to Editing class, that was different from Intro to Video Production. This was, even though we edited in that class as well. This was intro to Editing, or I think it was technically Intro to Post Production. Anyway, in that class,
JCM 202,
the entire curriculum was online videos. It was a instructure from lynda.com, which is now LinkedIn Learning.
Yep.
Instructure from that, which you can just get through your local library. And it was YouTube videos, mostly from Rocket Jump Film School, free to access, YouTube. So
I had the same experience.
Yeah.
That's a whole other. That makes me upset. I don't think that should be allowed.
I remember being very upset with it when I was in that class. I was like, I am paying for University of Alabama instructor, not this.
I was happening to take it during COVID, so the fact that it was already set up like that was one thing. But yeah, I don't think that's super fair, and we're not going to get into that too much because that's a whole mega, that's not a can of worms, that's like a monster truck of worms. And because everybody has a whole thing about colleges charging the same amount during COVID. I'm not making a statement on that. I just want to be clear. So anyway, yeah, I'm with you on that. So.
But here's kind of my bottom line on this online learning versus college learning. I think the reason, and I'll bring this up too. A lot of the work that I got was like you opened with is a lot of the work that I got was actually the stuff that I learned online, not the stuff I learned in college. But I don't think that's necessarily because it was better pedagogy that I was accessing online. The thing about those online courses, and the reason I got so much out of them, is because they are really just a test of how motivated are you to actually learn and do this thing that you want to do? When there is no due date, when there is no syllabus that says on this date we'll have this, on this date we'll have this, when there are no tests, when there's none of that, it is all on you to say, I'm going to take the time to spend this much amount of time on the course today to get this amount of the way through it. There's no penalty for not doing the assignments, not doing the projects. It's all on you to get those done. That is why those are so effective. Whereas, like I said, in college, there's a bit of self-motivation, and that's how it differs from high school. Is there is no, you're not living with your parents. At least most people aren't. So they're not going to get you up and get you going. There's no, tardy for being tardy to class or whatever. So there's a lot more responsibility involved. But it's it is there's still that oh well, if I want to get an A in this class, I got to turn in the script, or I got to turn in the edit. I got to shoot the video, that kind of stuff.
Well, and like I said too, I think building off of that, the other thing is the thing that you're really paying for. I have two different things I want to say. The thing that you're really paying for is the connections, because these teachers know so many people. They're just not. They didn't go on YouTube and learn it all, and now are just regurgitating.
Right.
It. For the most part, most of them have field experience or scholarly experience and know way more about films than you do, know way
Right.
more. You could describe to them, hey, I want to see a German, like, but spoken in Polish version of
Hamlet.
Hamlet. Yeah, there we go. I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah.
Like, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this guy directed it. Like, and that's,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have known that. But also, like, the people with our real world connections is how you get jobs. And that's the thing is, all this discussion, like, is all about how you get the skills. But the real thing you need is the connections and the industry experience.
Yes.
Because that's where you're trying to arrive to. Because realistically, to get a like full-time position, traditionally, you need 3 to 5 years of industry experience.
Yeah.
And how you arrive there is what's up for debate. But, and you know, if you find a better track that's not school, good for you. You saved money.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Or that's, you know, I'm jealous of you. But, that is normal. And that's why industry experience is so key. And that's what everybody says. But I think no one really makes the connection to the fact that everything is leading up to the same place. So, yeah. And so with that said, the other thing you talked about was graphic design. I think also at the same time, it's worth noting that you definitely did not go to a graphic design school, like a school that they don't have that. So you could have had the exact same experience in reverse if you went to a college in New York, for example, that's like, we do graphic design. Like that is what we do. And you're like, well, what if I want to shoot video? They would be like crickets. They probably have 0 cameras on that campus. So, you know, it's all about picking your path too. So it's like, just be willing to look multiple places at the same time. I think is kind
That's
of
great advice.
messages. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
So to kind of wrap up, do you have any like quick advice you have for people that are either both deciding for college, you can split this up into two, deciding to do film school or not, or, you know, they're in college, what's a way to be successful?
Well, I think for the first question, it's what you just said. Weigh out your options. Really look into what these schools offer and really think to yourself, what do I want? What ultimately do I want to do? And if you don't have an answer to that question, then that's the way that college is really helpful, is that it can help you zero in and discover, okay, this is what I want to do. Especially if you're going to a university where you can even discover, hey, I thought I wanted to do film, but I want to do computer science instead. You know, that is one of the greatest things, because, you know, there's a lot of criticism of the university these days that it's you know, it's not really worth it. It's too much money for not great stuff. But just to have that right there, you know, where you can just kind of have that survey is really good. So really think about yourself, what you want, and then look at what schools offer. If it's something that is a good enough program for you to spend that amount of money, go for it. Do that thing and really go for it. If it's something you want to just do on your own, you think you'd be fine doing that way, you go for it. You know, Gavin, who works here at the studio, did not go to college. He got an internship while he was in high school here at Seed Creative, and now he works here. And that is an awesome path too. So, you know, really weigh those options. And if you decide that college is right for you, and I think this is kind of regardless, however you do it, really make the most of it. It goes back to what we were saying about how our program was designed. Make the most of it, regardless of how the program is designed, wherever you're going to school, because at the end of the day, I have 2 films that you know I have in my belt that I directed, and now that I've gotten out, I've made more, but you know, just to have that, what a privilege that is. But that's only because I took advantage of the resources that were there at my disposal. At the same time, I have regrets. I say, man, I wish I'd have spent more time around cameras. Right. You know, I wish I had, you know, had learned more of this stuff that I wouldn't have had that I would have to pay for now that I wouldn't have had to then. But regardless, like I said, I took advantage of the opportunities I have, and that's the number one thing number one piece of advice I can give is you have so much at your disposal. use it, grow, learn.
And my two pieces of advice are, I 100% agree with everything you just said. So 100% echo all of that. And to add to it, look, if you're looking for a school, everybody wants to go to the niche film school, but it's okay to not. Like, it's okay to go to one that's a little less, like a little more closer to like a UA that's like non-traditional, because there is a lot of secret and hidden gems like in that. There are a ton of hardworking people. And I remember, I'll never forget this, but there's this lady who was one of the recruiters for Alabama, told me that because Alabama is not known to be a film school, a lot of times that actually helps them because they work that much harder to get in.
Yeah.
There are a ton of people, I'm not naming anybody, there are a ton of people that I've met that have a stuck-up ego about going to an established film school and just assuming that they're going to get a job. Not the case. Definitely not. I mean, it might help you if there's like someone that's like an alumni that's going to hire a bunch of alumni, but that's the same for us. Right. So like, absolutely pick a school that you're going to enjoy being at, because the other thing about college that's great is it's a time for you to grow up. It's a time for you to, it's like a safety net, a safe structure, but also loose enough at the same time to where you don't have to stay in it. But, I think that is super important to keep in mind. And then while you're in school, if you choose to go to school, the main thing is, and this is applicable to anybody, but the thing that I've discovered will put you ahead and get you better grades than anybody else is being on time for everything. Because most people that miss the dean's or the president's list or whatever, they either just having a hard time because school's not for them. But if they're like just barely missing it, they're just turning in stuff late, not going to class, that kind of stuff. And that's just, why are you spending the money if you're not going? Like, seriously, even if you hate the class, go, because you're going to get something out of it, like I said earlier. And then the other thing is like, just find other stuff that you love. Like, I probably sacrificed time that I could have been doing extra films, being the $1 Million Band and doing a ton of extra band stuff, but I have zero regrets, because this is your one time to be in school. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can go back, but you know what I mean? Like, this is your time to do it and do it to the best you can. So,
not to mention that kind of stuff, that influences the work you do here in video world. Absolutely. Too. That's something that I think a lot of people pretend is not the case, because it was like, I remember that being something I encountered in film classes, was it was like, where do I get my inspiration, and the professor would be like, okay, class, where do we get our inspiration? And people would be like, oh, this TV show that I like, and that'd be it, whereas in reality, you can get inspired for the scripts you write for movies, or the movies you make. You can get inspired from theater, you can get inspired from songs, commercial music, you can get inspired by opera, you name it. And don't be afraid to sort of branch out, like you were just saying, because it's gonna affect the work you do, and you're gonna have more to bring to the table that heightens the work that you do because of that.
Yeah, because like anybody, not you have to have the grades, but like anybody can go to film school and can be the same like mold of a thing that they just like push out the door. Mm-hmm. But what makes you special is what the other stuff that you pick up along the way is. So like for me, it's music and that kind of stuff. For you, it's theater, also music and other stuff like that. I mean, I have a friend who's like super into like true crime shows, and because of that, she was able to get she did some like student films, and it was able to get her onto a set. They got her a job right after school, and like that made her special. So like, do what you love. Mm-hmm. And make it go, put it into film what you love. That's the simplest, that's the best film school advice I think I could give. So
yeah.
What was your rec again? Say it one more time.
My recommendation, yes, one more time, is bringyourownlaptop.com, headed up by Daniel Walter Scott. He's also got classes on Udemy, Adobe Expert. He's got the certification that they have, because there's that thing. But he just, regardless, he knows it better than anyone I've ever seen. And great instructor, a lot of fun too. Not just like, not just a fountain of knowledge, but also just, I was in hysterics listening to his stuff because it's so funny.
I seriously want to get him on the podcast.
I'd
I'm
love
gonna
that.
Cold email him right after this.
Let's do it.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Again, I just want to say our opinions. We didn't say anything too like hot takey, but just, do make the most of your time. Do film. It's awesome. And yeah, keep checking us out on the podcast. Thanks for coming.
Later.
Peace.
This podcast was produced by Nick Golden with executive producer George Edmondson, edited by Nick Golden and Gavin Manning. Be sure to subscribe, drop a like and a comment. Tune in every Monday for brand new podcast content, and we'll see you on the next one.